Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have 3 chilling tales for you about creepy roommates that are sure to make your skin crawl. Whether it's unexplained behaviors in the dead of night, mysterious disappearances, or unsettling discoveries, these stories remind us that sometimes the most frightening things happen in the places we least expect. So, grab a cozy blanket, dim the lights, and prepare yourself as we dive into these haunting roommate horror stories. Let's get started.
Story 1. Echoes in the Basement.
The flickering neon sign outside the all-night diner cast an unsettling glow on Ethan's face. He stared at the greasy spoon diner menu, his stomach rumbling, but his appetite long gone. It had been weeks since he'd fled Luke's house, the memory of that terrifying night still raw. His parents had taken him back, their initial anger replaced by relief and worry. But sleeping in his old childhood room felt suffocating, a stark contrast to the freedom he'd craved. Now, homeless again, he was stranded in a cycle of regret and fear. A memory surfaced, the online ad that had lured him in. A charming 3-bedroom house, rent too good to be true. Luke, the owner, a quiet writer who was rarely home, bargain hunting in a desperate time. Ethan had ignored the warning bells. The interview with Luke had been awkward, his reclusiveness masked by a forced hospitality. The basement, however, remained a locked mystery, Luke's words about its off-limits status etched in Ethan's mind. The first few days were peaceful. Ethan settled into his cozy room, the quiet house a welcome change from his chaotic family life. Yet, a nagging dissonance grew. Luke's car, a rusty Ford Escape, was always parked outside, despite him claiming frequent trips. The scraping noises emanating from the basement at ungodly hours sent shivers down Ethan's spine. Then came the night he couldn't ignore. One stormy evening, a power outage plunged the house into darkness. Ethan, terrified of the dark, fumbled for his phone's flashlight. A faint, guttural moaning echoed from the basement. Panic clawed at him. He knew Luke was out. Curiosity battled with fear. Heart hammering, he crept towards the basement door, the source of the sound. The ancient knob was cold and slick in his sweaty hands. He hesitated. Should he call the police? What would they find? Suddenly, the doorknob turned. Ethan froze. The basement door creaked open, revealing a sliver of light and a grotesque silhouette. A stench, like something long dead, assaulted his nostrils. His breath caught in his throat. A skeletal hand, inhumanly long and clawed, reached out from the darkness. Ethan screamed, a primal, terror-filled shriek that echoed through the house. He scrambled back, knocking over a chair in his haste. Silence. Then, heavy, uneven footsteps ascended the stairs. Ethan backed away, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He saw the dark figure emerge, its form hidden in the shadows. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. A low growl ripped through the silence. Ethan knew he couldn't stay. He bolted past the figure, towards the front door. He fumbled with the lock, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The door swung open, and he lunged out into the storm-drenched night. He ran blindly, the cold rain stinging his face, the sound of his own ragged breaths filling his ears. He didn't know how long he ran, fueled only by sheer terror. Finally, exhausted, he collapsed under the shelter of a bus stop, the storm having subsided to a gentle drizzle. The streetlights cast an eerie orange glow. Shaking uncontrollably, he pulled out his phone and with trembling hands, called the police. Of course, they found nothing when they arrived, the basement door firmly locked. Luke, returning from his weekend trip, appeared genuinely surprised and concerned. Ethan, unable to describe the horror he'd witnessed, felt dismissed by the authorities. He had no proof, no witness except for the terror that clung to him like a shroud. Desperate and increasingly paranoid, Ethan decided to leave. He confronted Luke, demanding a portion of his rent back. Thankfully, Luke, eager to avoid further trouble, readily agreed. Ethan fled the house, the image of the skeletal hand and the echoing moan forever etched in his mind. Back in the dingy diner, staring at the menu, a new decision crystallized. He wouldn't let this experience break him. He would find a job, a real apartment, a place where he wasn't haunted by the horrors of the past. He might rebuild his life, but the innocence he'd once possessed, the easy trust in strangers, was gone. He had awoken to the dark underbelly of the world, a chilling education paid for in fear and sleepless nights. As dawn painted the sky a tentative pink, Ethan paid for his coffee, the bitterness a fitting metaphor for his current reality. He stepped out of the diner, his head held high, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. He would survive this, and maybe, just maybe, someday the nightmares would fade.
Story 2. Whispers in the Dorm.
Mark, a wide-eyed freshman, couldn't believe his luck. He snagged the last available dorm room, a double occupancy with a pre-assigned roommate named David. David, a senior with a laid-back vibe, seemed like a cool guy. He had posters of classic rock bands on the walls and always had a witty comment on hand. But as the weeks turned into months, a dark undercurrent began to seep into their living situation. David's late-night habits started innocently enough, strumming an acoustic guitar until the wee hours, humming along to obscure folk songs. But soon, the music morphed into mumbled chants punctuated by rhythmic tapping. Mark would peek through the blinds, heart pounding, and see David swaying in the flickering candlelight, muttering things that sounded like another language entirely. One evening, as Mark prepared for bed, David sauntered into the room, a strange glint in his eyes. "You ever seen a sleepwalker, Mark?" he asked, his voice unnaturally low. Mark, startled, stammered a no, and buried himself under the covers, pretending to sleep. The question hung heavy in the air, fueling Mark's unease. One night, curiosity gnawed at Mark. He couldn't take it anymore. David's room emitted an eerie glow, accompanied by the low chanting Mark had become accustomed to. Sneaking to the door, Mark pressed his ear against the cool wood. His breath hitched. It wasn't chanting at all. It was David, whispering Mark's name over and over again, a creepy, sing-song quality to his voice. Fear, cold and sharp, iced Mark's veins. He retreated to his bed, The image of David's glowing room and the whispered incantations seared into his memory. The whispering didn't stop. Night after night, Mark would lie awake, paralyzed by fear, listening to David call his name in the darkness. He started noticing other things too. Random objects misplaced in his room, whispers outside his door just before dawn. Mark's paranoia escalated. His grades suffered, his once bright eyes sunken with exhaustion. One afternoon, while David was at class, a morbid fascination overtook Mark. He knew he shouldn't, but the need to understand what was happening was overpowering. With a racing heart, he scanned David's room. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Textbooks, clothes, a half-eaten bag of chips. Then, his hand brushed against a hidden drawer behind a poster. He yanked it open. The sight that greeted him made him gasp. The drawer was filled with photographs, dozens of them. Photos of Mark, asleep in his bed, captured from various angles, the bedside lamp, the window, even the ceiling vent. But that's not all. Mixed among Mark's pictures were others, blurry images of another young man, his face obscured in shadows, performing rituals that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. Panic surged through Mark. He knew he had to get out of there. He grabbed his phone, dialing campus security with trembling hands. He reported everything: the chanting, the stolen pictures, the disturbing rituals. Security assured him they would investigate, but Mark couldn't bear another night under the same roof. He packed his belongings in a desperate frenzy, leaving a note for David accusing him of everything and a copy of the incriminating photos. He sprinted out of the dorm, not looking back. The university investigation was swift. David was suspended, his belongings packed and shipped home. Mark never saw him again. The whispers, the chanting, the chilling pictures, they became a horrifying memory, a constant reminder of the dark side of dorm life. But the experience wasn't just about stolen photos and creepy rituals. For Mark, it was a lesson about trust betrayed, a violation so profound it left him wary, hesitant to open up to people. He learned that sometimes the most innocuous facade can hide a terrifying truth. Years later, while browsing the internet, Mark stumbled upon a website dedicated to the occult. A headline caught his eye: Missing College Student. Unexplained ritualistic symbols. The grainy picture of the missing student sent a jolt through him. It was the blurred young man from David's photos. Mark felt the blood drain from his face. David's whispers, the strange chanting. It all made sense now. And the terrifying realization that something far more sinister than a disturbed roommate had unfolded in that college dorm room all those years ago settled like a lead weight in his gut.
Story 3. The Facade of Elm Street.
The cardboard box landed with a dull thud on the thin carpet. Michael sighed, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool autumn air. Relocating across the country for a new job was already stressful, and finding a decent, affordable place to live in Denver had been a nightmare. Thank goodness for online classifieds. He'd found a room in a nice-looking house, the virtual tour showcasing a spacious living room and a sunroom overflowing with plants. The owner, Rob, seemed friendly enough over the video call, a laid-back guy with a passion for rescue dogs. In person, Rob was even more charming. He offered a beer as soon as Michael walked in, a golden retriever pup wriggling excitedly at his feet. The house smelled faintly of dog biscuits and something herbal. Incense, maybe? Michael liked the smell. He politely declined the beer, explaining he wasn't much of a drinker. Rob shrugged, a hint of disappointment flickering in his eyes. The first few weeks were pleasant. Rob kept to himself most of the time, only chatting in the mornings over coffee. The dog, Charlie, became Michael's unofficial shadow, following him around the house and showering him with sloppy kisses. One day, however, Rob suggested they grab lunch. Michael, interpreting it as a friendly gesture, agreed. The lunch date was a turning point. Rob's conversation shifted from work to personal details, his gaze lingering on Michael a little too long. He kept refilling Michael's glass with iced tea, even though Michael hadn't asked. By the end of the meal, Michael felt uncomfortable, Rob's friendliness bordering on flirtation. He made excuses, promising to return the favor with a homemade dinner soon. Things escalated from there. Rob's invitations for lunch dates became more frequent, each one leaving Michael feeling increasingly uneasy. Then came the missing items. A favorite t-shirt, a pair of socks, even a pair of his lucky underwear vanished without explanation. He confronted Rob, only to be met with blank stares and denials. Unease curdled into fear. He bought a lock for his bedroom door, the satisfying click as it snapped shut a small victory. The lock enraged Rob. He demanded Michael remove it, claiming it was a lack of trust. Michael refused, citing his missing belongings. The argument escalated into a shouting match, Rob's friendly facade crumbling to reveal a simmering anger. That night, shaken and scared, Michael confided in Mrs. Peterson, the sweet old lady next door. Her reaction sent chills down his spine. She revealed hushed rumors about Rob, restraining orders from ex-girlfriends, and strange happenings in the house late at night. Terror replaced fear. Michael knew he had to get out. He called the police, explained the situation, and with their help, retrieved his remaining belongings. Leaving Charlie behind was the hardest part, but his own safety came first. The cozy house with the sunroom now felt like a cage, the scent of incense not calming but cloying. Moving into a cramped studio apartment wasn't ideal, but it was safe. Michael spent weeks looking over his shoulder, the memory of Rob's fury a constant shadow. He learned a harsh lesson, a lesson that resonated long after the initial fear subsided. Sometimes, first impressions are deceiving, and friendly faces can hide sinister intentions. He promised himself to always trust his gut instinct, no matter how charming the offer seemed. The cardboard box sat in the corner, a stark reminder of the nightmare he'd narrowly escaped, a testament to the importance of vigilance in a world where danger could lurk even in the comfort of your own rented room. However, the story didn't end there. Months later, while scrolling through social media, a headline on a local news website caught Michael's eye. Missing man, last seen leaving residence on Elm Street. The picture accompanying the headline sent a jolt through him. It was Rob, his face etched with a manic smile. Charlie nowhere to be seen. Fear turned to a cold dread. Michael knew more than anyone about the darkness that lurked within those seemingly friendly walls. He didn't know if Rob was a victim or a perpetrator, but the image of the missing golden retriever gnawed at him. He called the police, his voice shaky as he recounted his experience and Mrs. Peterson's whispers. The investigation reopened, and the once charming house on Elm Street became a focal point for a chilling mystery. The sunroom, once filled with vibrant plants, now held a different kind of darkness, a secret waiting to be unearthed.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to listen to similar stories in future.